All right, so dude, we got this widget now from Warcraft Logs that shows us the race world first and what we had 24 hours ago compared to right now. And as you can see on the left side of the screen, Imperative was at 0 out of 8 with only some attempts on Mythic Aranog, and we said that it was likely that some guilds were going to have killed Mythic bosses by this time today. Now we have Liquid at number 1 at 4 out of 8 Mythic. They have just recently downed Mythic Sinarth, and they are currently pulling Kurog Grim
Well,
Totem
they pulled Kurog once.
at time of recording.
At time of recording, yeah. I've heard then they might have broken into M+ after that, so we'll see if they're going to continue pulling Kurog. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if or when they'll kill that boss or if they'll leave it there, but 4 out of 8 have fallen in quick order to Liquid. They took out every single one of those bosses with, I guess it was 1 pull each of the first 2, and then 5 pulls of Taros and 12 pulls before Senarth went down to them, so they are making short work of the raid. At least the early bosses. Dathia, Kurog, much harder encounters we expect, though.
Okay, so let's talk about what we want to see in the daily recap and what we're going to talk about. First off, we're going to talk about Heroic Razageth. So Heroic Razageth is a very interesting encounter, and one that has been killed by one guild in the world, and that is
Liquid.
Liquid Guild ended up pulling Heroic Razageth off stream last night, right after they pretty late last night. They ended up killing it a couple of times. If you give me one moment, I will pull that up for us.
6 times, I think, they killed ol' Razageth Heroic, getting themselves a nice bit of extra gear. And yeah, it was done off stream as well, potentially to hide strats that they intend to use on Mythic, or potentially just to hide the Heroic strat if they believe that Echo, for instance, might struggle with the boss on Heroic as well, and they don't want to give away how they beat those hard phases of that Heroic boss.
So, I mean, just talking to some of the Echo guys, it seems like as well that they were going to be looking to pull this boss off stream. I think it comes down to a couple of things. 1, weak auras, 2, strategy. And so, like with Razageth, it seems like it's going to be one of the probably the most important boss, the quintessential boss of the raid.
Almost always the last boss is the most important one.
And anything that you can give away strategy-wise or not give away strategy-wise potentially in regards to what weak auras you have made for the boss already, what you kind of expect, how you're going to be dealing with things, what damage profiles look like on the fight is important. In addition to this, Liquid was 6 healing the fight. The fight has very heavy damage input, and I'm not super surprised that Liquid ended up 6 healing it, but they were doing it in, it seemed like, splits with primary characters, like in-house splits. So sometimes you bring in like helpers for splits like this.
Yeah, no shot that's happening for Razageth Heroic. That is way too hard of an encounter to be using helpers on. On the other hand, Echo have been, they spent a lot of their second day doing normal helper splits at the end. They ran 4 copies of 3 triple parallelized normal splits. So they went back to back to back to back with 3 different groups that were like 10 raiders, 20 helpers, and smashing through normal, gearing up their characters. That was their end of day. They started the day with normal Razageths. They got a bunch of other stuff done in the middle of the day as well.
So it's currently 1:37 at time of recording.
And they're finishing their last normal right now, yeah.
I mean, there was a rumor that they're going to bang out Heroic Razageths off stream.
No shot.
There's no way that they're going
no
to do
shot
that,
they're
right?
doing that before going to bed. Yeah, it is way too late. They're going to bed after that normal, because Heroic Razageth's got to be too tough in an encounter to try and do.
Are they just going to do
super
those?
tired.
Are they just going to do that off stream tomorrow morning?
Maybe, yeah. We'll see. We'll see when the thing comes back. They only need to do like. They don't need to hide the Heroic strats as well. So if they're going to off stream that, it would be just because of Mythic stuff that they wanted to hide. But even if it's stuff like comp, Liquid have already made some comp commitments with the first 4 bosses now.
Let's look at the first 4 bosses of Mythic. Let me pull those up as well for us so that we can see exactly what Liquid is doing, not only with their composition, but with just how they have some of this stuff set up.
Yeah, so we can see a look here of their pull count. there's that 1 pull of Kurog. Yeah, that's just the actual summary of the Kurog pull.
I don't even have them.
And we can see some of the characters they were
3
using
players,
there.
a whole 3 players.
Yeah. Even the Senarth comp isn't fully set up yet in there, but you can see it when you expand it here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not set up at the top still. That's going to be something that it seems like it'll end up getting refreshed later. I mean, one of the big things though is that they've been running a lot of melee, which I think is not. I wonder if that is more indicative of what they saw from
Razageth,
Heroic Razageth, where they're like, we want more melee and we can feel like we can afford to run melee on this fight. This is something that we talked about during our predictions, is like, how many melee do we really expect? Because we knew that melee were going to be good coming into the tier. There was a question of how many can you realistically run.
Yeah, look at this. We have 8 melee on a lot of these encounters, 7, 6. I guess this one didn't have as many.
2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6,
Oh, 7
7.
with
Yeah.
the warrior. Yeah,
7 with warrior.
that's a lot. I mean,
8,
again,
8 9 if you count these two.
the average melee DPS count on a end boss kill has been 5 historically. So that is a lot to be bringing to these bosses and to be gearing up with them. The rogues have been looking good. They've been playing outlaw on the cleave fights. They've been playing Sin on the single target. Mage is mostly playing arcane. A little bit of Frost DK coming in on some fights. A little bit of Fury Warrior on most of the fights. Just the one that we've been seeing out of them. And the tank comp double prot warrior. I think not particularly surprising. I think everybody's been expecting the one prot warrior. The second slot, I think there's some options there, but the first one being the prot warrior is definitely very good.
It seemed like Liquid's eye level was a little bit concerning. So that's something that we were looking at. I guess maybe it was only concerning because we had an expectation that Echo was going to actually walk into the raid around 400 item level, and so then whenever Liquid walked into the raid at 396, especially on their first Aeronog kill, that was a situation that I guess we'll say is unexpected.
I will say that the expectation that Echo were going to walk in at 400 eye level, that's like source. I made it up, right? Like,
well, no, I mean, even when I was talking to the guys at dinner, both
Okay.
a lot of the guys were saying that they were 400 item level on their main characters, and so I assumed that their raid average, at least,
maybe high,
was
yeah.
going to be high. Now, I don't think that that's going to end up happening. I think that just some players in their guild are 400 item level. Some of the
Right.
high value DPS that got fed gear.
Because if you look at the Liquid comps, it's like they have a couple people 391, a couple people 400, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Evens out to 396 on average on those first bosses, and their eye level's gone up to 399 now on their comps later.
Okay.
There's things you can do like crafting that will increase your item level, M plus as well.
Liquid already did their crafting.
Yeah.
I mean, crafting being one of the big ones, you're able to get 405 to 418 gear depending on you.
If you can get those M pluses done.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, one of the big things that we learned about today, let's talk about healer compositions. So, whenever we were watching gear get fed to players on the Echo broadcast earlier, one of the big things that it seemed like we were seeing is the allocation of gear to preservation evoker healers, and particularly two specific preservation evoker healers, which makes you think that they are going to be allocating gear and having those players as their mains.
Yeah, it's not for sure. I mean, they have been gearing up multiple copies of different healers, but the notable thing is that Liquid instead have been on the priests pretty heavily. Liquid have been playing 2 or 3 priests on their mythic progression encounters. You can see on the 4 healing, they've been playing 2 priests, 1 discipline, 1 holy. But on the 5 healing encounter of Taros, they brought it up to 3 total priests, right? That is a lot of healing priests and no evokers out of them.
So,
Whereas the evoker has been something that Echo has at least invested some gear into. They haven't played any mythic bosses yet. They may not play evoker in there, but they've certainly been leaving themselves the option.
it seems incredibly likely is
Yeah.
more or less what we're saying. In addition to that, I think that Liquid is playing a more safe composition with things that they know how to play with, things that they know how to play around. And on top of that, I think that having that Mistweaver monk as well gives you mystic touch from an added element to where you don't feel shoehorned into running that.
So, yeah.
Where you don't feel like you have to run that Windwalker monk later on.
They've been using the Windwalker and the Mistweaver, which gives them the flexibility to bench either if they want to. Whereas if you only had one of those in, you'd need to keep it in even if the fight wasn't great for it, right? Because you got to keep your Mystic Touch.
But yeah, exactly. So if Echo, which is kind of what they're posturing to do, doesn't look like they're gearing a bunch of Mistweaver monks, so it doesn't look like they're gearing any Mistweaver monks realistically.
Yeah, they've got maybe 1 or 2 that are getting...
Like, you can play
yeah.
them, but you want them to have high-value loot.
Right.
And so it seems like they're posturing for double Preservation Evoker on a lot of things. What exactly do you think that the double Preservation Evoker could bring?
I mean, the Evoker throughput has looked phenomenal. There's been some worries about the range that spec has. There's some encounters where maybe Liquid are concerned about trying to use it on fights like Broodkeeper, like Razageth, that have pretty spread out places. Dathia as well. You know, those are 3 fights where it may be sketchy to use that healer. But if you can bring it, it does a lot of healing. Holy Priest, though, also a throughput monster.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that spec is for, and it's a little bit safer and more of a known quantity, so...
It's just so interesting that it seems like Echo may be looking to try to shake up the healer meta for something that's been so stale for such a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, very little Devastation also seeing play so far. I think Echo may be gearing 1, and Liquid played 1 on Aeronog, but haven't played 1 on the other bosses, so...
I think Dev is good, but I think that like you run into the issue where good is not as good as required.
Right, and in a world with the raid buffs on a lot of these specs, you know, that you're going to need to bring them, the spots for these hunters, shamans, evokers, DKs that don't bring a raid buff like that, it's just so much riskier to invest gear into them.
Okay. I think that's going to conclude the daily recap. Basically, what we're seeing is Liquid is, at least at time of recording, still pulling Mythic Kurog Grim Totem, or they did it
Well,
once.
they did it 30 minutes. I think they only pulled it the once.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's chain pulling it, but yeah, we'll see if they decide to try and finish off Kurog today, or if they're going to go to bed at 4 of 8 with some more gear from M plus or something.
I think about 24 hours from now, tomorrow, we're gonna.
Yeah, let's make some predictions about what our time machine or what our time machine page is going to say tomorrow for the like the future. What
Echo 6 out of 8.
Echo 6 out of 8 tomorrow this time?
I think that's a generous prediction. I think that Echo 5 out of 8 is far more realistic.
I think yeah.
But I think that 6 out of 8 is doable.
I think Liquid 6 out of 8, Echo 5 out of 8 is a pretty likely thing to see this time tomorrow. Yeah.
That seems like that's actually a pretty reasonable thing. I don't think that either guild is going to kill Broodkeeper, barring some.
Unless that boss is giga easy, I think that boss it's likely to be at least 50 plus pulls. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. Hopefully we have some gameplay footage. I know we wanted to do heroic Razgath analysis, but everybody's looking to kill it off stream. So
if Echo kill it on stream, maybe we'll show some of it. Yeah.
Yeah, if I go kill it on stream, maybe we'll show some of it. I think that beyond that, we'll probably show like a Kurog Grim Totem summon out. Some
mythic boss.
Something that walls guilds tomorrow
Yeah.
or tonight, potentially. Some Kurog Grim Totem or Dathia. I think that those are going to be like the two beginning walls, but I don't think that's going to last them all day.
All right, I guess that's it for our daily recap video for the day. We'll see you tomorrow.